Hello, my name is Lisa Shea, and this video is part of the Blackstone Valley Art Association's workshop on making 3D sculptures with black foam core. We made this video on October 19th, 2021 during our October meeting. Thank you to the Massachusetts Cultural Council and Uxbridge Cultural Council for supporting all of our art activities. So what I'm doing here is I'm drawing in pencil a design on black foam core, and then I'm going to cut that design out with an X-Acto blade using a cutting board. And you can see over on the right hand side of the screen are the cutting boards and the X-Acto blades. And then sometimes we use notch techniques to connect them together, like in the swan creature over on the right and in the bottom of the tree. And sometimes we use a hot glue gun to more permanently attach pieces together, sort of like the birds on the tree branches. So right now I am drawing out the design, and in this case we're going to be working on an arched cat that has spikes on the back of the cat. So the spikes will be part of the design, and then I will stick a cat face on the front of the cat, and then I will also put a little rider on the top of it. So now that I have the design drawn out, I'm going to use an X-Acto blade to cut. And just as I mentioned in the previous video, I have an X-Acto blade that has a nice thick handle on it, so I have a good gripping surface because the foam core is fairly thick to draw through. Drag the knife through is what I mean. And you need to have, or at least I need to have, some sort of a basis to be able to carve my way all the way through the top layer of cardboard plus the foam core plus the bottom layer of cardboard that makes up this sandwich. So you want a sturdy cutting board on the bottom that is not going to slip, and then you want a solid kind of X-Acto blade that you can really grab a hold of. I find this is a lot easier than the tiny little pencil grip that they have on many X-Acto blades. You may have to draw the blade through a section of the design multiple times to cut down through all the layers. It's better to do it slowly through the different layers multiple times than to try to really gouge it through. And be very careful about where your fingers are, because if it catches on something and then suddenly releases from the catch, it can move pretty quickly. So you don't want it ever aiming at any fingers or body part. I am hesitant to draw it towards myself, but I don't have the hand strength to draw it sideways across from me. So I do have to draw it in towards me to be able to get it to pull. Just be careful when you do that, and don't do that too close to the edge, because if you're pulling hard to get through the foam core section and then suddenly you hit the edge where it releases, then it will move very quickly at that point, and that can be dangerous. So just always be careful when you're working with an X-Acto blade. It's worth it to note that it won't make tight corners or smooth curves when cutting through this kind of foam core. So you want to just be comfortable with the idea that you're going to be making generally blocky kinds of shapes, and that it works best in straight lines. So where you can, plot things out to have straight lines and then cut sections free as you need to be able to get to another straight line section. Okay, so here I've got the cat body finished, and I'm thinking about how to put it into the base. Now, I don't want to put the notch technique because these legs are pretty thin here. So what I want to do instead is make holes in this base piece of foam core that I've got here that are just the right size for the feet to fit into. And then I should be able to stuff the feet into those holes and it should hold it pretty steady. Another technique would be to glue it, but again, with those legs being so skinny and the cat being so tall, I don't know that I would necessarily trust glue to hold it up. So if you actually make holes for this to stick into the foam core, then that'll give it the best shot. And then you could add a little glue if you need to for extra stability. But that way you've got a section of the foot actually down in the foam core. And if you needed to, you can make a double height base and have the leg pieces sticking through 2 layers of the foam core in the base. And that'll give it even more stability. But what I'm doing right now is I'm tracing the shape of the feet, and then I will cut those holes out with the X-Acto blade, and then the feet of the cat should be able to stuff right in there, and that should hold it steady. Alright, so now I've got the holes cut in the base and the feet fit nicely into the holes, and that holds the entire structure nice and sturdy. So the next step is going to be working on attaching a head to this neck area. And I need to make sure that the neck area is nice and flat. Straight line, I guess is what I'm saying, because when I put the head against it, the head is going to need to seat nice and firm against this neck area. And if I have the neck area curved or bent or arched or something like that, then the entire head is not going to sit flat against that. So I am trying to straighten out a little bit this neck area so that the head can seat as fully as possible, because this is going to be done with hot glue, and I want that hot glue to have as many points of contact as possible so that the head stays firmly onto the body. So now I'm trying to draw out a head, and I want to keep the head proportional to the rest of the cat body and in the same sort of a theme. And it's going to go on perpendicular to the rest of the body. So you'll see in a second when I start attaching it, but it's going to be a flat head that will fit with glue onto the neck area there. Okay, so now that I have a head, I'm just trimming a little bit more in this neck to make sure it's as flat as possible, because when I put this head on, I want it to seat, you know, at the top end and the bottom end and so on. I want this whole stretch of neck area to be nice and flat and in a straight line. And then once I get that straightened out, to make sure that that pretty much seats well, and then I'm going to go and put hot glue all along this neck area to make sure that there is as much glue as possible to be able to hold the head on. Alright, so now that I've got glue on the neck, just a matter of taking the head and pressing it into the glue and then holding it there for a few moments. Hot glue is great because it sets very quickly. As soon as that glue starts to cool, then it starts to connect everything and you don't really need to hold it for that long. You want to give it a chance to set, so don't just like hold it for 1 second and then walk away, and give it some nice firm pressure. But it should stay pretty quickly. So you can see that's real time how quickly it ends up setting. And then you have to figure out how to put it down in a way that will let it continue to dry without having any torque kind of pressure to push it left or right or so on. So on one hand you might think, well, that's going to slide down and off, but that glue is so good and so nice and thick that that head is now going to stay on and be pretty firm in that position. Okay, so now that we have the cat with its body and its head and its base, next I'm going to work on making a little rider for it. Now when you're making small shapes, it's important to think in straight lines, because your X-Acto blade is just not going to do very well trying to move around corners and curls and so on at a tiny size, because of the actual cells of the foam core that you're working through. The cells have a size to them and they're not teeny. So this rider that I'm creating has very straight arms, very straight legs, and while it does have a curved head, I try to keep the curve as smooth as possible, and also when I start working on this, I'm going to cut in as many straight lines as I can and then just try to trim it. So it's good to have reasonable expectations when you go into small shapes, and then to also design them to work well with the way foam core is structured. Okay, I'm taking a quick break here to show off young Farwell's raven that she created. So this is a three-dimensional raven, and she added an extra piece of round foam for the eye, an extra piece of foam for the wing. She's got it in the notch method for the feet, so that the feet notch into little braces to support it. And you can also see that she used the hot glue as a decorative touch, so she added streaks to the wings and streaks to the beak with the hot glue. So that's another cool thing that you can do with glue to add some texture to it. So I'm finishing up the little rider piece, trying to carefully trim away all the little bits. And this should just sit right on top of the cat because I gave it a nice narrow crotch area that fits in the shape of the cat back. So that is how you would make a spooky cat with foam core. Thank you to the Massachusetts Cultural Council and Uxbridge Cultural Council for supporting us, and be sure to visit our BVAA website to let you know when we have upcoming events. Thank you very much for watching, and ask with any questions.